Welcome to Emotional Abuse to Euphoria, the masterclass series designed to help you identify emotional abuse, begin to heal from it, and go from victim to victor in relationships and in life. Joining us today is Amelia Fortes, self-love oracle, sensational speaker, energy healer. Her podcasts provide ongoing inspiration to turn people on to build their best life. Amelia has the knack for helping others find fairy tale endings in romantic relationships and overflowing abundance in money and career. She's been featured on ABC, NBC, BET, Fox, and NYU, among others. And today she's here to talk about self-love and setting boundaries so that your relationship doesn't go belly up. Thank you so much for joining us today, Amelia. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, and to all of you watching, thank you for being here.
Okay. So Amelia, can you please tell us what your experience has been with emotional abuse and how it affected you?
Yeah, absolutely. Aside from just my upbringing, I have a wonderful family, but I'm one small child in a huge family. And so for me, growing up, I experienced a lot of, I would call it emotional neglect. And not because people didn't love me or anything like that, but just everyone had their own lives, and as a small child you need a lot of emotional support, and so I definitely felt alone and neglected a lot. My siblings are much older than me, so by the time I was born they were already teenagers and having their own lives and things like that, and my mom was always busy, single mother. But I would say the biggest, this is really bad emotional abuse that I experienced came later. When I was in college, I was in a really abusive relationship from ages 19 to 21. So pretty much most of my college career, I was in a relationship with someone who, it started off verbally abusive and then it got really emotionally abusive and manipulative until ultimately it became physical. So that was really a really hard experience to go through. And yeah, that would be my biggest crazy experience with emotional abuse.
Okay, with all those experiences and the neglect you suffered as a child, you would never know these things happened to you, given how you are right now, today, and all you've accomplished. So how did you transform yourself from that to this energetic, magnetic lover of life that you are now?
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. I received that. Thank you. It's interesting. Like I like to say, and as you know, I'm imagining people watching this are going through something similar or have gone through something similar. This is who I am. This is my natural essence. And I think this is always who I've been. But certainly when I was going through that tough time, this side of me wasn't as out as it is now. Going through that kind of pain, and just to kind of paint the picture of what it was like we went to school together, so he would constantly, like, it got to a point where he like trained me almost. He would give a certain look across the cafeteria and I would just like know that he was mad and just like clam up. He would call me names and just really manipulate me into thinking that I was selfish and that I didn't deserve to be treated well. And like if I mentioned wanting to leave him, would say like, oh, you're never going to find someone who loves you as much as I do. And you know, being so young, I was just caught up in that swirl. And the way that I was able to transform out of it, the thing that I'll say is this is not making abusers right. What they do is wrong. No one should treat anyone badly. But the truth is I chose him too. And I also chose to stay. And even though it was hard to leave, I continued to choose to stay for years. Through that, I realized that what was I believing about myself, or how did I feel about myself that had me stay in this relationship? And this kind of feeling of like self-loathing came up. And it was like, wow, I must really not love myself or not honor myself in order to choose or think that I deserved this relationship. Because I feel like, you know, we choose the love that we think we deserve. And I stayed in that relationship because on some level, I think I thought I deserved to be treated that way. And someone who doesn't love themselves very much will choose that. The way that I was like really finally able to break away was because, like I said, it got physical. And it got physical a few times, but there was one time in particular that it was really bad, where there was like visible marks and bleeding, and that, I don't mean to say it this way or even laugh about it. I guess it's still uncomfortable to talk about, but it really knocked me out of that swirl. I was like, I have to stop. Like, if I keep going, this is just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And also I was graduating school, so I was able to kind of physically separate from him. And so through that, I kind of went through what a lot of people call like the dark night of the soul, where I was finally out of that relationship, but I was just like sitting in my room and wondering, like, what the heck did I just go through? Like, what just happened? And that was when I started to think about these questions of like, do I not love myself? Like, how must I feel about myself that I went through that? And so, you know, what's the antidote to self-loathing, right? The antidote to self-loathing is self-love. From leaving that relationship became this long, continuous journey of self-love. And that's why my work that I do is all about self-love. My whole business, everything I do, everything I work on with my clients is based on building a strong foundation of self-love, because I believe that until you have that necessary ingredient, that anything that you create and attract into your life is going to feel like it's missing something. It's not going to feel as fulfilling, or you're not going to feel as successful as you can feel, or as happy as you can feel, until you have that really strong self-love inside. So that's what I did. I just learned how to self-love and practiced and got help and therapy and all kinds of things. And now I've built my own methodologies and my own teachings from that experience that I can then pay it forward to teach other people how to do it and how to get out of these really not so great situations.
What processes can one use to reconnect to their essence after an abusive relationship?
I would say, I mean, there's so many, but the one thing that I would say is do things that you love, like things that just naturally bring you joy, and keep doing those things. There's a fire in you, right? And going through something really abusive and something traumatic like that, it can feel like the abusers took out your fire. It can feel like they put out your fire. But I promise you that they did not put out your fire. There's still a little spark, little embers there, because no one can take your fire away from you. The fire's a little bit low because it's been crowded by all of the abuse and all of the hardships. And so to really spark that fire, it's like find something that you really love. Something that you love where just by doing it, just by thinking about it, it makes you really happy. So for me, it was dance. So right after the relationship, one of my best friends was starting a competitive dance team and invited me to audition for the team. I was so depleted from that relationship. I was just like, I don't even know who I am anymore. I just feel so exhausted from all of that abuse. But, you know, dance was that thing that I loved, that I was able to be like, okay, I can leave my room, I can leave my house, let's do it. And I remember we went to the dance studio and I learned some choreography and they played the music, and it was really awesome how my fire started to get lit again, and I made it onto the dance team, and I danced on a competitive dance teams for years after that. And little by little, slowly but surely, like pieces of my soul started to come back. So whether it's dance or maybe it's drawing, painting, art, singing, even just listening to music you love, reading books you love, spending time with family or animals, like whatever it is that even just thinking about it, you're like, oh my gosh, that makes me so happy. Just start doing that and bring that back into your life regularly. Because chances are too, if you've been in an emotionally abusive relationship, you've probably lost touch with some of the things that really bring you joy. So just start to reconnect that and do it more and more. And like, that's why I always say dance saved my life, because I really felt like a shell of myself after that relationship. But when I started dancing again, I started to, oh, this is what happiness feels like. This is what joy feels like. This is what it feels like to not constantly be worried about something bad might happen. That's how I found my way back.
I'm sure this resonates very deeply with many of our listeners. I understand you need to find something that lights you up inside. So once they find that, then they can get back in touch with their essence.
Absolutely.
When somebody goes and dances, that transcends culture, age, everything. Dance is international, intercultural. So everyone can find some sort of dance. Even if you don't know how to dance, just move. Move however your body tells you to move. Movement is so liberating in general, right?
I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Movement and sound. If you move your body, you need to move all that stuff that's like stuck in your body from all the abuse and all the like traumatic things. And I agree with you. That's a great point too. Even if you don't think you know how to dance, it's such a great thing.
It doesn't mean you have to go to a club, but definitely dance is a beautiful thing and fun. So yeah, a lot of people stuck in emotionally abusive relationships have forgotten, or so it seems, how to have fun. So reconnect with that. Okay, got it. How does self-love affect your ability to experience life fully and even attract the perfect partner for you?
Oh, yeah, I love this question so much. I think of like attracting a partner or attracting something you want. I think of a flower. When the flower is in full bloom, that's when, like, you know, people and the bees and the animals are like, ooh, like, what's this beautiful, sweet smelling thing? And I like to think of that full bloom as like, if we were to imagine that that's a person, that full bloom is when a person is really deeply loving themselves. I invite anybody watching, like, think of any celebrity or public personality person that just really magnetizes you, that makes you drop your jaw, or think like, wow, I just want to be close to this person. And it's usually because that person is just exuding such a confidence, and there's such a grounding of self-love. And so that's why it's so important to have that in order to attract what you want. And I'll say, think of it the opposite way, right? Like, imagine a person that you really love, whether it's romantic or not, that's okay, but just imagine a person that you really love, and you see them and you want to give to them, and you're like, hi, I have this present for you. And what if that person was like, or no, I don't deserve it, or like, why would you get me something? I'm not worthy of it, or basically just not loving themselves enough to receive it. You know, that feel good on either side, right? So I think of self-love as like being so grounding and believing in yourself so much that you are just open and magnetic for all the goodness to come into your life, right? And like, it feels good to give to someone who is open and loving themselves. It doesn't feel so good to give to someone who's like, oh, no, it's okay. Like, I don't need that, or, oh, you shouldn't have. Like, it doesn't feel as good as when someone's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. So I think of that like a flower just being fully open and alive and in her own essence. Or I think of a person just lovingly and graciously accepting a present, and it just makes everyone feel so good. I think of that as like an illustration of what self-love can look like. And if you don't have that energetically, then you're closing yourself off to options, or maybe you're attracting like the wrong thing, right? Like, when you really love yourself, that's how you attract the goodness and all the good things.
It's authentic self-love, as opposed to so much that we've spoken about on the series so far, which relates to narcissism, which is fake self-love, if you will. So real self-love attracts good stuff and builds up a relationship. I love that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how can one make that constant? Because when one's in an emotionally abusive relationship, very often your days just seem all gloomy. And if you have a good day, it's an exception. When you're on the other side of things, how do you make it consistent? You're happy more consistently, and your bad days are fewer and far apart.
Just going back to that, finding that brings you joy and practicing that. Like again, back to dancing, like you said, you don't have to go to a club to do it. You can just dance around in your room, or if that thing that brings you joy is painting or drawing or reading a book that you love, or watching a really good movie, or spending time with someone who really does love you and treats you well. Bringing that more into your life. Self-love to me is a lifestyle. It's a practice. It's not like a one and done thing, right? So just like you brush your teeth, you don't just brush your teeth once and expect your teeth to be good for the rest of your life. You've got to do it every day, multiple times a day. You've got to floss. You've got to go to the dentist. You've got to do these things to keep up your teeth, right? Mm-hmm. So to keep up your self-love, you've got to create a practice to do that. So it's really back to finding the thing that brings you joy and creating a practice around that. The other practice is also practicing positive self-talk. So if you notice like how you speak to yourself or how you speak in general, like in your own mind, like I always like to tell people, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is 100% of the things that I think are positive, either about myself or just in general. And a 1 is 100% of the things I think are negative. So that means if half the time it's positive, half the time it's negative, then you're at a 5, right? So wherever you're at, just have that be okay, and just practice speaking to yourself in a different way that gets you from like a 5 to a 6, then a 7, then an 8, you know. And I don't think anyone is a 10 or a 1, or hopefully no one's a 1, but you know, wherever you're at, just keep checking yourself and rating yourself, and then you can actually measure your progress. And usually after a really abusive relationship, or especially with a narcissist, you know, you could probably be even as low as a 2. That's okay, but just get to a 2.5, then a 3, then a 4, you know, just slowly, lovingly work your way up. And the way you do that is by first noticing how you speak to yourself. And when it's negative, just say, oh, that was negative. Let me flip that. So like, for example, you know, when you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror, sometimes it's like, oh God, I look like crap today. Just like noticing that, like, oh, well, that's not very nice. Like, well, I look beautiful, or I look alive, or I'm refreshed, or whatever makes sense to you. But just noticing when you say bad things about yourself, that keeps programming your subconscious mind to believe badly about yourself. And you just build it up little by little.
I'm just waking up. That's okay to look this way right now.
I love that. I love that. It's pure acceptance, compassion. That's beautiful self-love. Exactly.
Okay, great. Let's go to the topic here with boundaries. When people think of boundaries, they think of enclosures or walls even. So how do boundaries actually open us up to keeping our partner engaged and to preserving ourselves?
I love that question and the comparison with walls. And like when I teach about boundaries, I do say like there's a difference between boundaries and walls. And like you said, you think boundaries, and that sounds like walls. And so there's a difference though, right? So a wall is like this. So like you can't see me, right? A boundary is like there's a line here. So we see the boundary, but we can see each other and we can still connect. That's like the main energetic difference between boundaries and walls. Walls put up, like you said, an enclosure that removes connection, right? So you can't see the other person, you can't feel the other person, and vice versa. But with a boundary, you still can have connection, but there's just limitations to what you agree to or what you consent to. And so there can be energy boundaries, there can be physical boundaries, there can be emotional boundaries. You can do whatever you want inside the boundary, and it keeps everyone safe. So the example that I like to think about is like sports, right? So there's a lot of different sports like gymnastics. You know, we all know they have to stay within that blue carpet thing. You know, in basketball and any game with a ball, like you go have the ball or the people go past a certain line. But it keeps everyone safe. It helps us know what are the limitations of this interaction. And we can do then whatever we want within the boundaries, right? For example, even with like, because you're talking about in a partnership, right? So even with physical intimacy, if there are no boundaries established, it can make physical intimacy kind of awkward because the whole time you might be thinking and the partner might be thinking like, can I do this? Or is this okay? Does this person like this? Do I like this? I don't even know. So it becomes like unclear. When you have the walls around that, then it's like nothing's possible. Mm-hmm. The boundaries where it's like, okay, these are the things that I like. These are the things I like to do. These are the things that we can do tonight, for example. That way you can go into the interaction being completely clear on where everyone is at, and then you can surrender more because now everybody knows the boundaries. Essentially, it's like knowing the rules of the game. You know, anytime you play a game, you're like, okay, well, what are the rules? When the rules, then you can really fully play. But when you don't know the rules, that's when it gets like really weird. You know, another example is like emotional boundaries. So like I like to talk about things right away, like process my emotions very, very fast. And when I'm feeling a certain way, I like to talk about it right away. He needs some time sometimes. So I had to learn his emotional boundaries that he sometimes needs some time. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't love me. It doesn't mean that we can never talk about it. I just know he needs some time. And so we learned how to establish those boundaries so that when I want to talk about something, he can easily say, can we set a time? He likes to set a time to talk about like deep emotional things. Like for me, I can talk about it right away anywhere, like in the restaurant, in the kitchen, wherever. But for him, he likes to like set a time. And so his boundary was, if you want to talk about deep emotional stuff, we need to set a time for it so that I can be prepared and that I can be fully present. And so that worked out for us. So we ended up having like weekly meetings, like partner meetings, where it gave us an opportunity to talk about the deep emotional stuff. So those are examples of how boundaries can really keep both of you safe, keep you safe, most importantly, and keep your partner safe.
Okay, so it can open up communication. It creates a forum for communication that's effective where both people are actively engaged.
Yeah, they actively engage and they both feel safe and loved and seen and wanted and clear. All of that is so important for healthy partnership, right?
Yes, absolutely. I love your visualization of the rules of the game and playing a basketball game because if you don't have rules to a game, you have chaos and you have people cheating all over the place and just trying to do what they think might get them to win. So that works for life. I get that. And that's so important to know because there's so many people out there, they think they're playing the game right, but they have no rules. So your relationship just goes boom, you know, and you've lost your partner. You no longer engage and it just doesn't work out. And you're wondering what happened. So you didn't have the boundaries there, right? So that makes sense.
Yeah. There's rules and then everyone's just like, what's going on?
That's how you can preserve your relationship. How can boundaries help preserve yourself, even outside of a relationship with an intimate partner?
There is such a thing as like internal boundaries. And what I mean by internal boundaries, it's like how much do you allow other people to affect your energy? When you have healthy boundaries, energy, your thoughts, and your beliefs, that definitely preserves your self-love and your sanity, right? So for example, what it would look like with bad internal boundaries, or let's say unhealthy internal boundaries, that's like, okay, I make a decision to do something, I feel good about it, so I go do it, but then I tell someone about it, whether it's a family member or my best friend or whoever, and they're like, oh, that's a bad idea. You shouldn't do that. That's not good because you should do this, this, and this, right? If I let that affect me and then throw me off and then I no longer trust myself, that shows unhealthy inner boundaries, because I'm allowing like the opinions and like what other people are saying to throw me off my game. Right? So it's almost like back to the sports analogy. So we've got our own game inside of us. So imagine if like you're watching a basketball game, for example, and so there's two teams and they're playing. Imagine if all of a sudden another coach or another referee or even a whole other team comes in and they just start playing too. Like, that's not allowed, right? Coach, the referee would be like, no, like, we're not in this game. So it's the same with us. Like, you have your own inner game, and strengthening those boundaries will support you not letting other teams, other coaches, other referees come in and mess your game up. Okay. So that's why it's really important for self-preservation.
Where does resilience fit in?
That's a good question. You know, resilience is really about, I mean, it really is about self-love and self-compassion, because I think that a big thing is that especially when we've been through emotional abuse, and especially when we've been involved with a narcissist, it can really weaken our self-trust. And it keeps us not trusting our ability to make good choices that are healthy. And so we can often feel like we failed. And really, resilience is all about, like, keep on going. You know, like, you might have messed up in love this time. You messed up in love a dozen times. But if finding love is important to you, you love yourself enough to keep going and to keep trying and to keep learning and to keep joining videos like this and learning and getting more information and loving yourself more. That's where resilience comes in. It's not about getting it perfect or getting it right. Okay, I kind of messed up that time, but you know what? I'm going to keep going. Why? Because I love myself, because I'm worthy, and because I deserve it. And that to me is that's real, true, awesome resilience.
Fantastic. Yeah, life will always throw some kind of curveballs, so resilience is key to getting through them and moving forward. Can you just tell us a little bit about your intuitive gifts that you possess, and how can those listening find out if they have similar superpowers?
Honestly, I believe that as intuitive gifts, sometimes you'll be thinking about someone and then they'll call you. Will answer a question that you had before, right? Mm-hmm. So is my emotions. My emotions, like I can feel what other people are feeling. I can feel if someone's lying. if you say like, how are you? And someone's like, oh, I'm fine. I'll be like, no, you're not. I like to talk about emotions being a gift, especially for people who have gone through emotional abuse or dealt with narcissists and things like that. Like, or just women also in general. Sometimes like we are taught that our emotions are our weakness, and not even just women, men, a lot of people. We are taught that our emotions are our weakness. Mm-hmm. And so what we do is we shut them down. But the thing is, our emotions is actually one of our most profound and powerful intuitive tools. And so if we're shutting down our emotions, then we're shutting down a big part of our ability to be intuitive. Because when we allow ourselves to feel things, then we can be more intuitive about other people and about what feels good and what feels right and what's the next right move for us or the next right person for us. We have to start strengthening those emotions so that we can use them to make better decisions, which is counterintuitive because a lot of us are taught that emotions make you bad at decisions. But I say no. I say your emotions are your gift, and your emotions actually lead you to the right solutions.
Emotions are a superpower. So if you have people who are highly sensitive people, then that is one of their superpowers, right?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, most people walk into a room or in interaction with other people, if they really stay tuned in, they can feel how it's going. So when people get more in touch with the love they have for themselves in a healthy way, and they're less self-conscious, then they can be open to receiving the cues from other people. They'd be able to hear their intuition in any situation. Maybe it could help them get that job in that interview if they receive cues from the person who's interviewing them, or on that date.
I love that. Yeah, totally. I agree.
I'm just building this based on what you said.
You're modeling it really well. Like, that's exactly how it can work.
Great. Do you have any final thoughts for those listening?
I would say, I know you've been through a lot, and sometimes it can feel like there's no way out, or that it might feel impossible to get better, but it does get better. And that fire inside is not out. It's still there. And finding things that bring you joy and pleasure and happiness are going to guide you back to yourself. And that true essence is never lost. It's always there. And just keep following your joy. And that's how you'll find your way back.
Hey, beautifully put. For all those listening, yeah. Amelia has a gift for you just for joining us today. It's a 22-page self-love activation guide for love and relationships. And this title is great. It's called Friend Zoned, Fuck Zoned, Frustrated. And I actually want to read the overview that she gives because it's beautiful and it's right on. Let's be honest, great sex with a hot guy used to be fun, but it's not what you're looking for anymore. You want real commitment from a good man, but it feels like there aren't any. You find yourself saying, I've come to terms with the fact that I just might never find the one. But deep down, you know you haven't come to terms with shit. You're lonely and it sucks. One more engaged post and one more moment pretending to feel sublimely happy for another girlfriend who's pregnant with the love of her life might just push you over the playing it cool edge. You know you need help. So if this resonates for you, this self-love activation guide will really hit home.
Yes, thank you so much for reading that.
I loved it and I felt like I had to share that. Thank you so much for offering that free gift. And I really do hope that many here take advantage of it. Just click the link below and you'll get that free gift. Amelia, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been so much fun, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for watching.